Hi, and welcome to Prairie Acres Farm. I'm Michelle, and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be making Dill Havarti. But let me back up a little bit. This is a very brand new YouTube channel, and why are we starting this? The very first reason that we are starting this channel is to give glory to God. My husband and I, we own a very small family farm. We are veterans, and so it's also a veteran-owned farm. God has blessed us so much, and we want to share those blessings with you. The second reason that we're starting this channel is to educate. I love to teach, and so I hope that what I present to you will be informative and educational. And the third reason is to provide our community, our family, friends with high quality, nutrient dense food. All of the milk that I use here in my kitchen is from our own farm, either from our cows, Josie and or Carmen. Right now, Josie is the one that's being milked. Carmen is out visiting her boyfriend. We also have 14 does and 2 bucks that are goats. They're Nigerian dwarf goats. And the reason that my husband and I chose those particular breeds is because of the milk. The milk is very high in butterfat, both for the Jerseys and for the Nigerian dwarfs, and it makes beautiful cheese, yogurt, you name it, I make it. I also use the milk, specifically the goat milk, but I also use cow's milk in soap making. So that's another video that we're going to do in the future. The other item that I make a lot is butter, and we are going to be making some butter here soon. So you will get an idea of how easy it is to make, but also how beautiful it is. Because my cow Josie gives us wonderful cream. With cheese making, I use this book, and this is a book that I found when I first started making cheese, and it is a wonderful book. It is Artisan Cheesemaking at Home by Mary Carlin. And I love this book. The instructions are very easy to follow. And I've already got my page marked. So, as I said, we're going to be making Dill Havarti. And so down here, it tells us exactly the ingredients that we need and then all of the step-by-step instructions. Now, I don't want you to be alarmed. So, when we start making the cheese, if I have a piece of equipment that you don't have, I will make suggestions on workarounds or hacks, if you will. So, join me as we head into my kitchen further and make some cheese. So, some of the ingredients that we are going to be using today to make Dill Havarti is, of course, milk. So this here is all of the milk that, well, it's not all the milk for today, but it is the milk that we're going to use today. It's roughly 4.5 gallons. These big jars hold about 5 liters of milk, which is about 1 gallon and a quart, give or take. So my this is a very small batch also for me. I normally make anywhere from 10 to 20 gallons of milk at a time into cheese. So this here is a very small batch, but it's to give you, the viewer, an idea of what is required or what you can use for your cheese. Now, this recipe calls for 2 gallons of milk. So I'm going to be using 4 to 4.5 gallons. So I'm just going to double the amount of ingredients. The other thing that you're going to need is muslin. Now, one of the things about muslin is that it's not created equal. This here is some muslin or butter muslin that I had bought, and I absolutely detest it. It is not very good. It's not a fine woven muslin, and I do use it for butter because it does allow the buttermilk to flow through fairly easy. The other butter muslin that I like, I get this through the New England cheese, yeah, New England cheese making company. And this here is really, really, really good butter muslin. It washes well, and some of the butter muslin that I've used from them, I can wash, I can bleach, because some of the cheeses that I make, it does stain, and you can tell the difference between the butter muslin. Look at that and look at this. You can there is a stark difference. Make sure that you choose quality over quantity. That's just an example of the different types of butter muslin that you can buy. The other thing that we're going to be using is rennet. If you would follow me. So I would also like to introduce Mari, or Maricela. She is my good friend, and she's my videographer and editor. And she is the one that's behind the camera. So Mari, if you could follow me. So some of the other ingredients and utensils that we're going to be using to make the Dill Havarti is first and foremost the rennet. This here is veal rennet, and I get this through the cheesemakingcompany.com as well. Please keep in mind this is not a paid promotion. These are legitimate items that I use every time that I make cheese. The other item that we're going to use is MM100. As you can see, I've used it. I normally keep it in the freezer because it helps promote the freshness of the cultures, and this here is milk filter. So again, this here is, I choose it MM100, and this is what I use for the Dill Havarti. Now the MM100 is a very good milk culture, and you can use it in various cheeses. The cultures are important. However, what goes into the cheese, or what differentiates the cheese, is the temperature, the time, and the culture. Those are three very important factors in cheese making. As we go through the process, you'll get a better idea. Another item that we will use is a thermometer. I did have other thermometers, such as this, but the probes, they end up falling into the way and it shorts out the probe. So I kind of stopped using it because I've gone through 3 thermometers that way. But I do like the thermal thermometer. It does give a fairly accurate reading. Now this pot that I'm using, this here is actually called a brewer's pot. It's what beer makers use. It does have a spout, but I don't use it because when you go to drain the whey off the cheese, the curds get caught in the mechanism, and it just makes a mess. So I kind of stopped using that. But the most important feature on this pot is the thermometer. It has its own thermometer. So if something goes wonky with my thermal thermometer, I have this as a backup, which is always really good as a reassurance because you don't want your cheese to get too hot. A couple other items that we're going to be using is a half-inch teaspoon. That is going to be measuring the rennet and the culture. Now, when you go to cut the curds, you've got several different options. The first is a curd knife or a curd cutter. And this here I use a lot, but my most favorite tool that I recently purchased, and this here I got off of Amazon. Eventually, I'm going to be putting links to these items in the description so that you could purchase it on Amazon yourself. I just haven't gotten that far. But I really like this, and the difference between the two is it's very difficult to get nice uniform cubes of curd when you're cutting with this, especially in a round pot. It's not that it's difficult with this either, but this here allows my curds to get smaller and just a little bit more manageable. So I really like this. Now when I'm using my really big cheese pot, which is actually an Amish canner, it fits on my stove all the way back to the wall. And this here is called a cheese cart. And this here, you go down one way or vertical and then horizontal. And it does make fairly decent cubes, but I still prefer this. A couple items that I have is some ramekins. I've got already dechlorinated water in one. because when you go to mix the rennet, you want to mix it in dechlorinated water. Have I used chlorinated water in my cheese? Yes. Has it affected it? No. But to hold true to the recipe, I'm using non-chlorinated water. And you can do this in two different stages, if you will, or two different methods. The first method, taking tap water and dechlorinating it, is just to put it into a container and let it sit for 24 hours. The other method is to boil the water and then let it set for, well, until it cools, because you don't want to use warm water in your filter. It'll kill it. So the other item that we're going to use is this pot. This here is a very large strainer. I can fit up to roughly 10 gallons. Well, no, actually a little bit more. About 15 gallons of curd in here. But I love this, and I got this at a local shop in Beaumont called Commercial Kitchen. Love this. One of my best items. The other item that we're going to use is a cheese mold. This is the one that I'm choosing today because I just like it. It's easy to manipulate, and I can get roughly 4 to 5 pounds of curd into this one container. And today I just wanted to be kind of short and sweet, so we're going to go big. The other item that we're going to use is a cheese press. Now this here I also got off of Cheesemaking. I love this press. This is a very, very good beginner friendly press. It works by magnetism, and we'll get to that, and I'll show you how we'll set it up. This here is worth the money. I mean, and it's not cheap. I'll guarantee you that. However, with that being said, like I said earlier, quality. You want quality items. Now, if you don't have a cheese press and you have access to milk, especially raw milk, there are hacks that you can do, and I'll explain a couple of hacks when we get to that point. Let's go ahead and we'll prepare the milk. This here is a 5-gallon pot. So I know I can comfortably fit up to 4.5 gallons in this pot. So, all right, so let's go ahead and put our milk into our pot. Now, normally I skim the cream off to make butter with, but this time I'm going to use full fat milk. In other words, I've not taken the cream off. This here is going to give me a very beautiful creamy cheese, and we want that. So the reason why the milk is in different containers, so my husband, he's the one that does the milking for me. I used to milk the cows, but I had some health issues, and so my husband started doing majority of the milking, which I am exceptionally grateful for, because milking is quite the chore. And Josie absolutely loves David. She's a very particular cow. She only lets certain people milk her, and Maddie is one that she lets milk her, and my husband. Now my cow Carmen, oh, she's a wonderful cow. Gives beautiful milk, and she's not fussy on who milks her. I have a lot of half gallons, and so when I'm making cheese or other items, it's kind of nice to have the smaller containers, and it's easier for me to deal with. But when my husband is in a rush, because he does work a full-time job, he'll also put it in these bigger containers, and it doesn't take up as much room in our milk fridge. This here is a 5-gallon pot. As you can see, technically I could probably get another half gallon in here, but there's no way I would do that because it would overflow, especially the whey. The whey would just get everywhere. And I've had that happen before where I've pushed it to the max, and I paid the price with a very big mess. So we are going to heat this milk to 86 degrees. And we're going to put the lid on. And there we go. All right, so our milk is up to temperature. Actually, it's a little bit over temperature, but that will be fine. So I'm going to take my lid off and just kind of set it aside. So one of the things that Lottie wanted to know is whether you could use store-bought milk to make your cheese. And you can, as long as it is not ultra pasteurized, preferably the whole milk. However, with that being said, when you are making your cheese, you're going to have to add calcium chloride, because during the pasteurization process, the calcium chloride that is naturally found in raw milk is processed out. So you have to add it back in. That is why I prefer the raw milk, because I know that nothing is taken out and nothing is added back in. What you get is beautiful raw cow's milk. So speaking of additives, another thing that you can add to your cheese if you wanted color is annatto. Annatto is a colorant that they use in cheese. It is a natural product. So there is nothing that you're adding to your cheese that is unnatural, shall we say. So I do use annatto, especially if I'm making a Colby Jack, because I want that color differentiation, because people are very used to having that color differentiation in their Colby Jack cheese. So I do that for that particular cheese. And sometimes if I'm feeling in a festive mood or a colorful mood, I'll add a little bit of annatto to my cheese just for a color differentiation. But that's really it. It doesn't add to the cheese in any way in flavor, taste, or texture except for the color. So, as I said, our milk is up to temperature. Now, I did make a mistake. It is not 86. For the Havarti, it is not 86. You want it to come up to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And please don't ask me what that is in Celsius. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add our MM100. And for 2 gallons of milk, you want a half a teaspoon. So I'm going to add double that. I'm going to add 1 full teaspoon. Just want to sprinkle it on top. And I'm going to add just a teeny tiny bit more because I put in roughly 4.5 gallons in here. So I'm just going to add just a teeny bit more. And that's it. So we are going to put our lid back on. Actually, I'm going to let it sit for a couple minutes. Typically, it's 5 minutes, so I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes. And the reason why you let it set is because this here is freeze-dried milk filters. So you want it to rehydrate, and that's what we're doing. We're letting that filter rehydrate, and it takes anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. We're just going to let it do its thing, and then we'll come back, we'll stir it in, and then we'll let it ripen. See you in 5 minutes. All right, so, there's our timer. So that was 5 minutes. So what we're going to do now is we're going to integrate the cultures into the milk, and then we're going to let it ripen for 45 minutes. So to mix your culture in, all you do is take a slotted spoon, just go down, and you just want to bring it up, kind of like in a circle, if you will. But you want to try and push it all the way down to the bottom so that all of the milk gets inoculated. You don't want to do it for too long. I would say about 30 seconds to a minute. And then I just give it a nice stir. Make sure that culture is all the way through. So I was just thinking, so there's a lot of people that can't handle milk. in general. They're lactose intolerant. However, raw milk is different. Raw milk is so body friendly that people that cannot drink store-bought milk because it induces bodily issues that are or can be embarrassing. So like flatulence and etc. However, I know there are many people out there that say that they're lactose intolerant. They can drink raw milk and they do not have the lactose intolerant symptoms. So if you are one of those people, try a little. If you have access to raw milk, just try a little bit and see how your body reacts. Am I telling you to go out and purchase raw milk and dive right into it? No, absolutely not. What I am saying is that people have a very big misconception about raw milk. They're concerned about whether it's dangerous, etc. Now, my husband, he goes through a lot to make sure that the milk that we use is drinkable, like right out of the cow. We go through a lot of sterilization processes, both with the cow and with our equipment. We use a milker, a closed system milker. So once Josie is all the way disinfected, her teeth and her udder and so forth, that milk goes into a very closed system so nothing can get into it. And then it is triple strained into our containers. And then it's sealed up and put in our milk fridge. So it's awesome milk. I can take it and drink it right out of the jar, and I do, especially if I've got Oreos. Before I forget, let me set my timer to 45 minutes. So if you have those concerns, whether you can drink raw milk or not, or whether because you've been told that you're lactose intolerant, at least try it. You will never know if you can handle it if you don't try it. All right, we will see you in 45 minutes. All right, so we're back at the stove. The milk has ripened for 45 minutes. My timer just went off. So I'm going to remove the lid and set it aside. The next thing that we want to do is we want to add the rennet. And then once we add the rennet, it is going to set again for 45 minutes. And this recipe is a half teaspoon of rennet, and you put it in non-chlorinated water. So, and I like these little square measuring spoons because I can go in and not create a big mess, because I'm very good at creating a mess. And I'm just going to put in a couple drops extra because I had that extra bit of milk. So very little in there. There's that. And then all we're going to do, we're just going to sprinkle it into our milk. And then we're going to take our slotted spoon, and just like what we did with the cultures, we're just going to move that around, going up and down, and getting as close to the bottom as you can. As you can see, I'm like touching the bottom right there. And we're just mixing that in because we want that rennet to fully incorporate. I'm going to still the milk. And then we are slowly going to bring the temperature up to 86 degrees. And I'm going to cover it. So once it comes up to 86 degrees, you just turn your temperature off and you let it finish ripening for the full 45 minutes. All right, so we'll see you in 45 minutes. All right, so our curds are ready. And so I'm just going to take the lid off. Now, how you can tell whether your curds are ready, you just take your curd knife, make a slit, and just very gently lift it up. And, whoop, I goofed. It should give you a nice clean break. See how that broke? That is what you're looking for. Now, as demonstrative purposes, I'm just going to show you. So when you go to cut your curd, if you don't have a curd knife, you can also use just a regular long knife. But if you do have a curd knife, you just go in one way, like that. And this is rough cut. So you just go vertical. And then you go horizontal. Just like so. Now the problem though with using the curd knife and a round pot is that it's very difficult to get nice half-inch cubes, which is what the recipe calls for. So you just want to come down at a 45 and just cut as best you can. That's really the only way you can do it. So that is what you would do with the curd knife. Now, as I said earlier, this here is my favorite tool. And so even though this here is a round pot, it still allows me to get nice sized curds. I just kind of work my way around, and I go down to the bottom and bring it back up. And you can see the little bit of yellowish on top. That's all that cream that was in the milk. So this is going to be some really good cheese. I love that extra fat content in my cheese, but that's just a personal preference. Now, when you're doing this, you're going to come across the spout and the temperature probe inside of the pot, so just be careful of that. But yeah. Now, those are really good curds. Oops. Told you I make a mess. And you just let that heal for 5 minutes. Once your curds heal for 5 minutes, then we'll move on to our next phase. All right, so our curds have sat for 5 minutes, and there's our timer. So we're going to take the lid off, and all we're going to do is we're going to stir for 10 minutes, gently. So what I mean by gently is all you do, so this here is a spurtle. I love this tool. It's great for cheese making, but you just gently go around the edge and just gently bring it up. You just want to break up those curds a little bit, but not shatter them. And if you come across a curd that is still kind of large, you can just cut it with the edge of the spurtle. That's one of the reasons why I like using this tool. Now, if you don't have a spurtle, you could use a ladle, or a long slotted spoon, just something to get in there or into your pot and move your curds around. And that's all you're doing right now at this moment is just moving those curds. And the difference between what you're seeing, so my whey has a lot of fat content in it from all of that cream. So my whey is going to be a lot more yellow than what you would normally see. When I take majority of the cream off, my whey is more like cloudy water. But because I've got a lot of cream in this, mine is a little bit more yellow than what you would normally see. But that is fine. Now your store-bought brand milk, now I've not used store-bought to make cheese before, so I don't know what the color of the whey would be, but I would assume that it would be a lot more clear with a bit of cloudiness in it. And we're just gently stirring, just moving those curds around. So our next step, once the 10 minutes is up, is we're going to let this rest for 5 minutes. And the purpose behind that is we want these curds to sink. And they will, or should. And then once they sink, then we're going to take off some of that whey and we're going to add in 130-degree water. I already have it warmed up in my kettle. And that is going to essentially cook your curd. I mean, we want it to cook, but we don't want it to like overly cook. So that's why the temperature is a little important here. All right, we will see you in the 2.5 more minutes. Our curds have been stirred for 10 minutes and they have rested for an additional 5 minutes. Actually, there's a story behind there and I won't get into it today, but it was kind of funny. So they've sat, and now I'm going to ladle off some of the whey. Now I want to keep some of this whey for Maddie, and so I've got a container in the sink with a funnel to catch it. And so I'm just going to ladle it up. And normally I have a measuring cup, but I had all kinds of cream in my measuring cups. So I'm using a very big soup cup. And so we just want to ladle out about 3 or 4 quarts of whey, and then we are going to replace it with the water that I've prepared. And when you put the water in, you want to bring the temperature up to 97 degrees. Alrighty, so there's that for Maddie. To finish getting the whey, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So I have my colander lined with butter muslin. So if I get any curds, which I normally do, it will catch it for me. That way I'm not putting beautiful cheese down the sink. But I just want to get the level of this whey off. Now this whey can be used for all sorts of stuff. So I've made soap out of it, lemongrass and whey, by the way. And then I have made ricotta cheese out of the whey. Now this particular whey would make amazing ricotta cheese because of the cream content. And then you can feed it to your animals. Alrighty, so we just want to bring the whey down to the top of the curds. And now we're going to replace it with water. So just to give you an idea, our curds is at 82, and so we want to bring these curds up to 97. So I'm just replacing the amount of whey that I took off with warm water, approximately 130 degrees. And then I'm going to take my spurtle and I'm just going to run it along the sides first. Okay, I'm going to check the temperature. It's at 98. So I don't need to add any more water because we only wanted the temperature to sit at 97, or it reached 97, and it's done that. So at this point, we're going to add our cheese salt. So with this cheese salt, like I said earlier, you can use Redmond's sea salt, you can use the pink Himalayan salt, or you can use the fine grained cheese salt, which is what I'm using. So all you do is the recipe calls for 4 teaspoons per 2 gallons of milk. And as you know, we doubled our recipe. So I have roughly 8 teaspoons of cheese salt. And I'm just going to put it in here. And then we're going to stir for 20 minutes. After the 20 minutes are done, then we're going to line our cheese mold. All right, see you back in 20. All right, so our curds are done. I've stirred them for 20 minutes. And so according to the directions, I'm supposed to ladle off enough whey to where I can mix in the dill. Now this is probably the only deviation that I make with the recipe is I don't like putting the dill in here with all the whey because I figure it's going to be a waste. So what I'm going to do is I am going to take off enough of the whey where I can handle the pot, and then I'm going to finish putting all of the curds into the colander lined with the buttermilk. So that is what we're going to do. And it kind of serves two purposes. One, it gets rid of the whey, and two, it saturates my buttermilk because your buttermilk will drain a lot more efficiently when it's wet. And don't worry if you get curds in there, because it's going to go in there eventually anyway. So it's not a problem. The really nice thing about the Havarti, especially, well, Dill Havarti or just regular Havarti, is that it's one of the very few cheeses that I make where you do not have to age it for a certain amount of time. Now, you can age it if you want, but this is almost a ready-to-eat cheese, and I like that aspect. There are some cheeses where I have been aging it for months already in preparation for Christmas time because that's my busiest time of the year. And according to Texas state cottage laws, because I am using raw milk, I have to let my cheeses age for at least 6 weeks before I can sell them. So I try and plan in advance for that. So if I were to sell this Havarti, I would have to let it age for 6 weeks. All right, I think that is at a level where I can manage it now. And these curds are so beautiful. And my hands are very clean. I've washed them and everything, so no worries there. Now this here is where I add the dill. And the recipe calls for about a teaspoon per 2 gallons. And as you know, I've already doubled my recipe, so I'm just going to eyeball it. We'll start with that. And with your clean hands, you're just going to incorporate that dill. And so this here serves two purposes. One is help the dill get incorporated in your curds, but it also gets the whey off of your curds. This is looking so beautiful. Oh my goodness. This is going to be one of the best batches of Dill Havarti I've made. Yeah, we need a little bit more. Now, when you are making this cheese, it doesn't have to just be dill. It could be any herb that you would like. Cilantro would be a really nice herb to put into your cheese. Um, Saffron, thyme, rosemary. All of those are beautiful herbs to use in your cheese. I do make a cheese that it is called saffron infused manchego. Oh my goodness, it is a beautiful cheese, and it's actually one of my best sellers. All right, so what we are going to do next, I'm just going to move this over to the side a little. I'm going to get my mold and a cheesecloth or butter muslin. I have a whole stack of them here that I keep right there. That way, when I'm making cheese, I can just grab it. Now, ordinarily, you would wet this in the whey, but I did not save back whey for that. And it's not going to be a big deal because these curds are still fairly wet. So it will wet the butter muslin. And all we're going to do now is just put all our curds into the mold. Now, as I said earlier, this mold usually holds about 4 or 5 pounds of curd. So I should be able to get most of these curds in here. And if I end up with a little bit more, then I can just line another smaller mold and finish it off. And as I'm putting the curds into the mold, I'm kind of moving them around, trying to get into the corners, pushing it down a little bit. So I would love if you guys could leave me a comment in the comment section on what you thought of the video, whether it helped you, and what are the content you would like to see going forward. Keep in mind that anybody that is disrespectful or nasty, you're going to be blocked because I don't have the patience. I don't want to have to deal with that. So please use common sense when writing in the comment section. I would have very much appreciate that. It looks like I am going to get all of the curds into this mold. Oh my goodness, this is awesome. I don't normally have it that precise, but this turned out really well. I'm just kind of scooching it down a little bit more because I've only got a tiny bit right here. And with as much work as it takes to make cheese, I want to make sure I get every last little bit. Also, in the comment section, why don't you write down what your favorite cheese is? I would be interested in knowing what kind of cheese you would like me to make going forward too, because there might be a cheese that I haven't heard of that you would like me to make. All right, this is looking very beautiful. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take the longest end, if I do that correctly. I do the side here. And all we want to do is just bring it up a little bit and then bring it over, just, just like that. And then you're going to take your follower, that's what these are called, is the follower. And you're going to set it directly on top. We're going to go over to the cheese press and I'm going to show how to load it. All right, so this here cheese press is generally made to it over by the sink where it can drain in the sink. But the issue that I have with that is that my butter muslin gets so wet when draining, especially when you put it under weight, that the whey ends up all over my counter. So I've been putting it on a cookie sheet to catch the whey and also to keep my counter dry. All right, so I'm just going to move that off because I don't need that. And I'm going to grab my cheese. So I'm going to just move the cheesecloth out of the way. So this here obviously is a lot wider than my cheese press. However, that's not an issue. So all you do is you put, put your part down. And I kind of aim for equidistant on each side of the follower, on this side and on the other side. Make sure it's in there pretty well. You want to make sure that your follower is sitting inside, like so. And then you're going to put your springs on, and then the top. Now the top of your cheese press, it's got these numbers here on the side. It looks like a ruler grid. And what this is pounds. So 0 pounds, 20 pounds, 40 pounds, 50 pounds, or 80 pounds. Now this cheese here normally presses at 8 pounds for 30 minutes. So, but I have learned from experience that it takes a little bit more than 8 pounds. So put your weights on, and then all I do is press it down and it stays. And that's it. This is what makes this press so wonderful. I don't have to worry about water bags like I do with my Dutch cheese press. And it is just all very well contained, and that is what I love about this cheese press. So now it'll stay in this cheese press for 30 minutes. Then I'll take it out, I'll flip the cheese, and then it will go back under that weight for another 30 minutes, all the way up to 3 hours. After the 3 hours, then you take it out of the press and you just let it sit without any weight. And leave in the mold without pressure for 3 hours before putting it in the refrigerator for 12 hours. So not only is this the shortest amount of pressing that I do on a cheese, but it's really the only one that I make where I can leave it in the mold and stick it in the fridge for 12 hours. And then you take it out and voila, it's ready to eat. So once you let your Dill Havarti refrigerate for 12 hours, you can take it out, unmold it, and then you can vacuum seal it. Let me back up. First, if you are going to age it, put it in a near saturated brine, which is salt and water, that has already been prepared. Or you can brine it in a near saturated brine, which I already have prepared. Stick it in the brine for 8 hours, 4 hours on one side, 4 hours on the other. And then what I do is I vacuum seal. Once it is refrigerated and you've brined it and you have vacuum sealed it, this here is what it looks like. Now this here is a cheese that I did not long ago. Actually, I made this on 7/20/25. So on the front of my cheeses, I have the date that it was processed. In other words, the date that I vacuum sealed it. It's not necessarily the date that I made it. It's the day that I vacuum sealed it. So for instance, tomorrow, this will get vacuum sealed, but after the brining, and so it'll have tomorrow's date. And then it's got the cure date of 8/31/25. And then I put in the pound and how much I charge. And then newest on my labels is this is a product that is made in a home kitchen and is not inspected by the USDA. So this particular label does not have that, but my new labels going forward does. That is what it looks like. It's amazing cheese, and I hope you give it a try. Thank you for coming and joining us today, and we hope to hear from you soon.